Hey, well, welcome back, everyone. I'm Ben Gloss. With me on tonight's call is Charley Mann. This is something that we're doing new in the law firm. 2 weeks ago, we did a session on a Wednesday evening on how to be proactive, and we talked about Stephen Covey's habit and one of our core values of proactivity. And we got a lot of good feedback. Had a lot of folks on the call on the Zoom meeting that night. And as Charley and I were sort of riffing over the last 2 weeks, we said, let's do it again. And we thought that this would be a great topic to talk about communication and communication skills, particularly in these times where everybody is, we're all either under one roof all the time. You may be under a roof and have nobody around or not many people. I have 6 other people around all the time at our home. Or you also may be like Charley and I, we're just on a lot of these Zoom calls. And so improving how we communicate with each other, we thought would be a fun little topic to riff on tonight. So Charley, thanks for, I sent Charley some notes late this afternoon. He's the master of creating good PowerPoint presentations. Not that we want to kill by PowerPoint at all. That's another topic, another talk one day, how to be a great, effective speaker and using PowerPoint the right way. But let's talk about communication tonight, Charley.
Yeah, so thank goodness PowerPoint has design ideas. But Ben,
Yeah.
I found this quote. I'm a fan of George Bernard Shaw at large, and it seemed apropos. The single biggest problem with communication is the illusion it has taken place. And I'm pretty sure everyone who's watching this can relate to that weird sensation where you have a conversation with someone and you feel like you've reached an agreement, and then you turn around, you walk away, and all of a sudden you go, I don't know that anything was accomplished in that moment.
Or worse, and we'll talk about this. You get a result back based upon what you thought was clear communication, and you're like, man, there's a mismatch here.
Oh yeah, big time. So this is the principle that we've often talked about. I know we've actually talked about it in the office recently, the seek first to understand. So Ben, can you explain that phrase in particular?
Well, it's what we're talking about tonight, and it really is. It's not specifically one of our core values in the company, but it is one of the things that we really focus on. I mean, we've got between the two companies about 20, 21 people under roof at any given time, except for this time when we have about 10% of that number in the in-house at any time, or maybe 15%. And we do tons of communication. As I said, face-to-face, Zoom meetings, email, written letters, still all sorts of things like that. And as you look around, in America and in discourse in America, from watching the evening news, or if you're on social media at all, there's a lot of talking that goes on. Not much, in my view, good communication that goes on. And so we start with really, if you can just jot this down and remember it, if you will seek first to understand, and we're going to talk tonight what that really means, seek first to understand the other, you'll win. You'll win in every communication, every quote argument that you have.
Yeah, so this is obviously a fantastic quote that I think we've talked about a lot, and the quality of my communication is measured by the results I get. I've heard you say that. I've heard Dave Fries say that. Variations on this from a lot of people that we've worked with over time. And in terms of measuring communication, because measuring, Ben, sounds a little clinical almost, but what are you looking for when you're talking about the results that you get?
Well, so first, let's just go back to talk about what this means. And so, yes, fully from my friend Dave Fries, who's a very famous estate planning attorney in Pennsylvania, and he's a nationally recognized speaker and on business and motivation, and has written a number of books on communication. And so, this actually embedded in this principle here, or this mantra, is the principle of you take total responsibility, right? And so Dave tells a story in his from the stage talks of hey, you're hungry, and you draw this vision in your head of a bacon, lettuce, and tomato sandwich, and then he'll typically get someone in the audience to kind of describe what their favorite BLT looks and feels and smells like and all that. And then he tells a story, you're asking your spouse he or she says, what can I get you for lunch? And that BLT, but the BLT that comes out isn't exactly like the vision that you had in your head. And Dave's point is, it's not the other's fault, right? It's your responsibility and it's your burden to communicate accurately what it is you want. So in that case, the result is a sandwich. In the business world, the result often is the work that a co-employee is doing for you. In the parenting world, it is often the behavior that you get back from your children. And in the in the couple to couple, the husband and wife, the partner world, it really is it's the BLT sandwich. It's, gee, if you're not hearing me and getting what I think I asked for or communicated to you, it's not your fault. It's my fault for not communicating better. And again, I just can't reinforce how important this principle is of taking responsibility, of your default being to take responsibility for anything in your life that's not going as well or as perfectly as you would like it to go. Look to yourself first. So Dave, he said this in one of the very first talks he did for us, probably 14 or 15 years ago, and it's just become part of my internal DNA now.
Yeah. And this, I think, is, and actually, I'll just say, kind of this whole topic, this seeking first to understand. And I said this the other day when we were talking in the office, that this is one of the hardest principles to internalize, because so often, and we'll talk about this, so often you kind of come to the table with an agenda.
Well, you
And
want to
you
win.
want what you want. Yeah, you want to win.
Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, but I'll tell you that great teams, and we'll talk about some of the rules that our teams play by in the business world. Great teams and great leaders understand this. And so if you can get this and internalize it and make it a part of your DNA, I mean, you will be better off, and you'll be in that elite top 10%, because you're right, Charlie. Most people have never thought about this much less tried to live by it.
Yeah, absolutely. So you sent me this phrase in the notes for this, and I personally was just immediately excited about this. I was like, Ben's going to tell us America is great for this reason. So what's behind this?
America doesn't need to be made great again. America is a great country, born just over 300 years ago with a new idea. And the idea was that the individual was foremost, that the government served the individual. And if you read American history and understand what we did once we realized really how free we were and how free we are, that what we did was to give ourselves permission to lay out our ideas, to communicate things that were new and different, knowing that anything new and invented and going beyond where we've been before is going to be a challenge, both in just because it's new and it may fail, but also because people may ridicule things that the ideas that we come up with. So when America works best, it's when leaders and everyone else who's giving ideas to leaders throws ideas on the table with good reasoning as to why and how the ideas might work, without fear of being dehumanized, demonized, depoliticized, if that's a word, because of the idea. And that's how we went to electricity. That's how we went to automobiles. That's how we went to mass production. That's how we moved from an agrarian society to an industrialized society. So America is great, and this is the thing I believe will get us through this pandemic, the coronavirus thing. I mean, I think it's going to be entrepreneurs that lead us out of this. It's going to be business leaders who are going to figure out how to make it safe for both themselves, their employees, and their customers, patients, and clients, how to make it safe to run business again. It's not going to be big government, right? And it's going to be those who, and the entrepreneurs and the business leaders, we're going to push against big government, and we're going to try to do it responsibly. But that's what's going to get the economy moving back again. And so the principle here, the thing I would like you to take away from this, if you're listening to this, is do not be afraid of putting ideas on the table, as long as you're thought about them enough to be willing to defend and explain. Again, seek to understand. So explain to the other how it is your idea is better than that person's idea.
Yeah, it's funny, Ben, when I saw this, when I was thinking about it, the first thing I thought of was naturally the First Amendment, freedom of speech being kind of the big overarching opener for that bit. And thinking about one of the things my dad told me when I was younger is one of the great things about the country is that you have the right to make whatever decisions you want to make for yourself, including whatever stupid decisions you want to make for yourself. And with the idea of freedom of speech in communication, we are all free to communicate pretty openly. And these days, gosh, everyone has a broadcast network in their phone, and you get to communicate very, very freely. But referring back to one of the previous slides, what are the results that you're actually getting through the communication? Is it inflamed rhetoric, or is it understanding? And it's going to start with you.
Well, right. And so what we have to get back to, so this is why I'm a fan of long form podcasts, and there's nothing, or there's not much that's better than listening to two or three people debate the ideas of the time, and they are on three different sides of the issue, and the best ones are debating and discussing ideas respectfully. They are prodding and asking questions to understand each other's positions, and this is the way that I believe that you get people to follow you, right? It's not by edict, it's not by force of government, it's not by law, right? It's by being an intellectual leader that gets other people to go, yeah, this makes a lot of sense. And in my view, it doesn't matter if you're on the right, the left, the center, or whatever. This is totally absent from American politics today, sadly.
I think you and I could probably could talk until the sun comes back up about this particular subject. But I'll bring us back around to communication. Stephen Covey's Fifth Habit: seek first to understand, which is the central theme of this. And disagreements. This is really, I think, central to this concept, the idea of a disagreement. But explain this right here.
Well, so when we're talking about communicating better, I'm not talking about when you and I get together and we're on the same page as to a marketing idea or a business building idea or an employee relations idea. I mean, we're basically speaking to an echo chamber often. But so many communications that we engage in society are where the two people don't agree on something, right? It could be everything from the existence or not of the dangers of climate change to how many thousands or millions of years old is the earth. And this is what we spend a lot of our oral communication time in disagreement with somebody. And most of the time, the default is I'm trying to convince you and to make sure that you get it. So, repeating the same thing 3 times, pounding my fist on the table, again, dehumanizing somebody who disagrees with me by, for example, if we're talking about minimum wage and I have positions on minimum wage and were someone to say, gee, I think everyone should be paid $15 an hour. And were I to not respond to that, but to say, why do you hate like the least skilled of society, right? That's not trying to that's trying to make sure that they like get it and get pulled and bludgeoned over into my position, rather than asking questions first to understand exactly what somebody means when they do it. And I'll tell you this, when you have these discussions, and we have a lot of these at our dinner table. I mean, I've got 3 college age kids. I've got, my youngest is now 18, is a junior in high school. They've become patterned to have conversation about many different topics that are fair, balanced, reasoned conversations, that don't end up with somebody slamming down the plate and leaving the table. So let's, if we can readjust our thinking when we're in disagreement with somebody to, I'm not going to go first to trying to convince you and make sure you get it and you understand my position, but rather, Stephen Covey, I'm going to try my best to understand why you, Charlie, are of your position. We'll talk about some techniques for doing that here in a minute.
Yeah, which is very helpful because this is definitely an area where technique helps a lot. Because when most people, we kind of learn some social skills that maybe help us get by in high school and college. And a lot of times that involves interactions with teachers and the importance of being right or being persuasive, which I don't really think are necessarily adult communication skills, unfortunately. And you have to relearn some of this stuff.
If you watch most adults, that's exactly the way they communicate.
Yeah. So 3 bad habits over which you have total control that people can work on.
Again, so that's before we go to the next slide. I mean, this is right back to being proactive, like the things that so no matter how much you disagree with someone or how much you know and they don't, or how much they know and you don't about a topic, you have, as we talked about 2 weeks ago, you have total control of your own thoughts and your own behaviors. So I thought about like, okay, 3 kind of traps that people fall into that lead to communication that's just not high quality. And a communication that's not high quality leaves people feeling like, A, dissatisfied, B, pissed off, or, 3, A, B, 3, get it? Totally roaring mad about something. So, and again, if you can start to think about these habits and maybe check yourself when you find yourself falling into one, I think that you'll find the quality of your communication gets better. And what this does overall, if you can get this figured out really well, blood pressure goes down, your heart rate stays down. You don't get so bent out of shape about people that you just disagree with. And that's, social media makes it very challenging and difficult, to do this because everything is in, I don't know, 72 characters or something. But anyway, let's look at these, because I think if you can write these down and find you, again, change yourself first, find you checking your own behavior first, that you'll enjoy, you'll have more enjoyable conversations, even with the people who disagree with you most.
So I don't, just so you know, I don't have them listed all out on one specific slide.
Okay. Oh, that's another, right. Because it's important that you take notes. Okay, right. So the first bad habit is I'm listening to the other and I'm formulating my reply or my rebuttal, which, I find myself sometimes getting there, especially if you're getting amped up with somebody. You can be having a discussion with your spouse and you everybody knows what I'm talking about. You guys start to go at it a little bit. And what's actually happening is you're not listening at all, or you're listening for that one word or phrase that then allows you to make your same point again, versus listening with the intent to ask the next really good question, to understand, to make sure you clearly understand what they're asking you to do or what their position is.
This is definitely one of those that with a spouse, with kids, or with anyone that you've worked with or known for a really long time, you
Yes.
lose this over time. Like this gets dulled, it erodes over time because you know each other's buttons. You know how you can arouse anger or sadness or something in someone. And you know how you can just kind of move people.
Well, yeah. So exactly right. And so the joke there is you catch yourself and you go, okay, I'm on argument B. Now you use argument 4. All right. Then I'll say argument F and you'll say argument 1 because we've done this pattern over and over again. And so you're right. And but that's a habit, right? And it's a bad habit. And bad habits can be broken. But so again, the point is to next time you're having discussion with someone with whom there's disagreement, or even you're just trying to learn, is go in with the intent of not what my reply to you is going to be, but what's my really good question that's going to dig deeper into what you mean. And in a few minutes, we'll talk about um, some of the dangers in asking questions too, because there's a danger there. But if you get this right, I think it's really fabulous.
So Ben, I just want to make one quick comment about this. So for those who don't know, I was a theater major in college. And this concept of listening with the intent to reply, when you are involved in a scene and you're working with a partner in a scene, you're on stage, this is actually kind of a central tenet of acting. Is a lot of actors, and I know I was guilty of it frequently, get up there and you've got your lines memorized. And there's a general concern of just being able to hit your mark and get your lines out done correctly. And so you start just saying your lines and you stop listening. And your acting teachers are always saying, just trust yourself to know your lines and actually listen and let yourself respond. Yes, the text may be dictated, but let yourself hear and respond in that moment. So it's interesting to see that overlap.
Well, that's very interesting because then, a good actor is actually getting into the scene more than and better than if he or she has simply memorized lines and is waiting for the period or the question mark and now delivering the line.
Yeah, it's really
So
difficult.
the next sort of bad habit again. So we're talking about when we're listening to the other speak, and that habit is to listen now with the intent of confronting or offending. So the first one is I'm listening for my logical rebuttal to you because I'm going to prove to you that I'm right. Second one is I'm pissed, right? And so I'm listening to maybe now even hit your hot button. The thing I know can make you angry. I'm not even going to try to logic you. I'm going to insult you, say something I know that maybe you feel deeply with that is hurtful. And all of us have done that, and we all regret it later. I mean, it's just so we know that this is a bad habit. But again, if you can find yourself, I mean, this is a kind of a cool intellectual game to play, frankly. You can have a good discussion with someone and be playing an intellectual game up at this level, which is stop myself. I have this urge to either explain, logic you, or insult you, or make you mad. And we all know what that feels like. And then just kind of suppress it and give yourself like a brownie point for, and now you can't go back and go, I was going to say, Charlie, that you're so stupid that, a rock could beat you in an IQ contest. You don't go back there, but you suppress it and you give yourself a brownie point.
I think that's a really excellent point about the fact that if you are going to store this stuff away, if you're not going to kind of let it all out, you then should have a way to let it go completely out of you. Don't store it up. Don't wait for a new moment to unleash it.
Yeah, I mean, at least don't unleash on that person. The old thing: if you want to write someone back in a really nasty email, you write it and you never send it.
Yes.
Again, if you've got a great comeback, right, and it would really piss someone off, you can write about it to yourself in your journal later, and then give yourself like 5 stars for suppressing that and for being. Our whole thing is, can you be better today than you were yesterday? You're not comparing yourself to anybody else. You're just trying to be a better you. The last sort of bad habit that sadly happens is you're just intimidated into not speaking up at all. You are, because the other is using these bad habits of either trying to outlogic you or to offend or insult you. You just leave and walk away without ever expressing your voice. And what I would say to that is, the world is looking for your voice. It's looking for your well-considered voice. If you really don't have an opinion, if you haven't studied a subject, then it is far better to remain silent than to open your mouth and remove all doubt. If you really are clueless about something, many people break this rule, but they just pontificate about it anyway. Um, but the world needs your voice, and the world needs your courage and bravery to put good ideas on the table, even when it's uncomfortable. So I would encourage you to not be sort of intimidated by someone who's going to talk bigger, faster, and just keep going and not let you get a word in edgewise. And maybe you don't get to voice it right in that moment, but we do need your good ideas. Your spouse, your co-employee, your business partner, whoever it is, they need, and they really do appreciate and need your good ideas. So let's try not to be intimidated by that.
Or I'll just add this real quick. If you don't, like you said, if you have some ignorance of the subject, ask a question. Don't be afraid to instead put a question mark behind what you've said, because when you ask that question, I think you have three positive outcomes. One, you yourself are enlightened. The second possible outcome, you've now helped others who may have had the same question but didn't speak up. And then the third is that question may inspire a new novel idea in the person who was sharing the information, and they'll be inspired by what you've asked.
It's a really good point. So, I have my own I have very definite life views, some political views. I could fix things, right, if I was the king. But there's people that really vigorously disagree with stuff I say. And one of the things I'll always try to say to them is, give me your best author, give me your best book, give me a resource that I'll go and I will read it. So if you and I disagree about, climate change or economics or minimum wage or, tort system or anything, like, okay, I've heard what you said and I would like to learn more. So give me your very best resource on this. I'll give you mine if you ask, right? And I'd love to, do a little book club with you, and let's just, let's just see, because I'll always learn, which really kind of gets us to the next point here, which is, what if there was a way to come out of every difficult conversation a winner? And I think that there is. And Stephen Covey, in his book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, says, I can have greater influence with others if I truly understand them first. And so in any, and again, it may sound weird, but in any conversation I'm having, which is a challenging, difficult conversation, I'm actually having that conversation on 2 levels, right? It's one is the one I'm actually having, right, with the person. And 2 is the level sort of up here where I'm saying, what's the learning? What is the learning that's coming out of this challenging conversation? It might be some very special, particular topic learning. The person knows something or knows a fact or, is aware of something that I don't know. So, and I think that if you come out of conversations just totally pissed off and your heart rate is up and your blood pressure is mad, and you let that ruin like the rest of your day or the next several hours, then you've lost. It doesn't matter. I mean, you've lost. But if you come out of a conversation, again, knowing a little more, it might be knowing how this person thinks. It might actually be knowing some new subject matter that they actually knew more than you did, that you do about. Even knowing and getting a better understanding of how to manage the temperature of conversations because you're playing this game, then that's how you win in every single conversation. It does not mean that everybody you talk to is going to go, damn, Ben, you're right. Boy, I'm 100% behind you. But it means you both have advanced in understanding. And when 2 people or a group or team advance in understanding, then you're going to get to better solutions together, for the challenges that the world brings to us.
And then how about some suggestions, here on best practices for approaching this?
Yeah. So it really it goes back to seek first to understand. Um, Brene Brown talked in her book, Dare to Lead. I have it here. So I always get the name Dare to Lead. And it's a really good book on this subject. But she talks about practicing empathic, empathic from empathy, empathic listening, which is I'm listening not only to the words that are coming out of your mouth, but I'm trying to discern the emotion. I'm trying to discern the experience that has created the emotion for you. Um, Not, again, not because I'm going to use it sort of against you, but if I can express back to you, if you're upset, that I at least understand why you are upset, right? I don't have to agree with it. I don't have to agree with the basis of it. But if I can understand why you perceive something as upsetting, then that really helps lower the temperature in both people. And it really opens up the brain for both people to be able to hear. Because what happens is when you're getting amped and the other person is getting amped, the amygdala takes over, and there's a whole bunch of science on this too. And you actually start to not be able to hear any rationality. Your limbic system is taking over your fight, flight, or freeze primordial system is preventing your brain from hearing. So again, this is I'm having discussion at one level, but at this level, I'm trying to understand, like, where is this emotion, if there's emotion attached to it, where is this emotion coming to? And then I'm trying to express back to the other that I have a better understanding of the emotional reason why they're expressing what they're expressing. And then the second part of this is respectfully seeking to be understood, which means, again, yelling, not respectful, pounding the table, not respectful, saying the same thing 3 times in a row, like, what, you can't hear me, not respectful, but doing your very best to model the behavior that you would like to see. Again, effective leaders lead not by dictating, right, and not by brute force. They lead by really modeling the behavior that they would like all those who, you know, in the organization can be family, can be business, whatever, the behavior that you'd like to see. So always be the one that people say, hmm, didn't blow up, was respectful. I mean, we practice law. We have every case is against somebody who has a fundamentally different view of the case than we do. And
Yeah.
you gain and keep a great reputation amongst lawyers, judges, whatever, by how you handle res- respectful disagreements.
And this is not always easy, especially right now when uh, you may feel like your empathy tank has been drained
Yeah,
because everyone is a little bit more on edge. It just makes a little bit more. So this says how to listen to win. Right now, I think a lot of us are increasingly in the talk to win category because there are also right now as we're recording this and doing this there's national debates about reopenings, things like that, and we're all talking to win instead of listening to win.
there's talk TV going on right now where people are screaming at each other, or they're all speaking, all five are in an echo chamber. Neither one of which really advances knowledge very much. So listen to win. So the first point here is really relates back, and that's asking yourself, is there an emotional component which is driving this discussion, right? And you can, because if you ask yourself that question and you think, yeah, well, geez, Charlie's really pissed off, right? Okay, now if I can get to the root of why he's upset, and it could be 100, it could be a fight with the wife, it could be, somebody cut him off in the traffic. The more that I can understand, not just the words you're saying, but where it's coming from, then the sooner I'm going to be able to connect with you, so that at least if we walk away from the conversation, we'll have each be able to say that we were respectful to each other. So that's one. So it's, identifying whether there's an emotional driver there, and there often is, especially, families are they're under roof 24/7, how many days in a row. Many businesses are stressed because business is down. People are, many people are unfortunately out of work, and there's a whole ton of, just read the newspaper in the morning. There's a whole ton of bad stuff going on. So go there first. Is there an emotion driving this that I can connect with? And then the second part is, we call this, what is the real issue? And it's something that I think we're pretty good at in our organizations when we're having our team meetings, our leadership meetings, and trying to figure out the answers to things that were really what we call moving the needle on the business, is getting down to, like, okay, you said A and I said B, but what's the real issue here? And finding out if the other, like, actually understands the real issue that they're trying to make a point about. So, we'll have a discussion that comes up just about, let's just say number of phone calls, to the office, but we'll say, the number is up or the number is down, and if the number is down, then it's an issue. And we'll say, but what's really, our question is, what's really going on here? Could be broken website, broken links, phone systems don't work. Could be phone answering isn't up to par. It can be anything along that path. So asking yourself as an organization, all right, what's the real issue? Having an argument with your spouse, let's just talk about what's the real issue here, what's really driving this. Because a lot of people, they would appreciate, like, you drilling down there, and two, sometimes they don't even realize that there is an issue underlying the actual disagreement that they're having. And so again, if you can help address this calmly, asking good questions, which we'll talk about next, really how to ask questions, it just helps move civil conversation along.
Speaking of those questions, a quote from you: ask questions for the sole purpose of understanding.
Yeah. So how many times in a argument or discussion do you ask a question already knowing the answer to, but the question is asked to, quote, to prove a point, right? Or to make a point.
I'll admit that my wife Missy and I had a discussion yesterday that this definitely happened. That, open and honest, that we actually started asking enough repeated questions that we knew where we were leading each other. We started laughing because we saw the absurdity all of a sudden.
Because you're having a discussion here, a conversation here, but you're both also playing the sort of psychological game up here, the peel back game up here. So for example, you're walking out of the house, you have a certain color shirt and a certain color tie, and you got your keys and you're heading out the door, and your spouse says, "Are you wearing that to the office?" No. Change right now, but it's an example of a question that we know the answer to. I mean, the plan is, yes, I'm wearing this to the office, versus something like, gee, would you take a suggestion, or would it be okay if I helped you? I mean, that's just, the first question has an agenda behind it. Again, the story I tell myself is, I'm an idiot. How could I be walking out of the house in this color tie and this color shirt? But if we can get into the habit of again, asking questions that help you get down to the real issue, asking questions that help you understand, not the agenda question. Again, you go back to, someone will say something like, again, I think minimum wage is a good issue that I like to discuss. And someone will say, well, I think that I would say, there should be no law forcing an employer to pay minimum wage. And so rather, the smart person will say, well, tell me more, or explain how you get there, or what that means. And the person who's not interested in that conversation will say, why do you hate poor people? Why do you hate the undereducated? Gee, don't you think everyone should be able to live? and those questions aren't real questions, right? They're not intended to get to understanding. So this gets to kind of well, the second thing about that is when you do that, when you ask questions, it allows that person to keep on talking. And what do we want most? We want to know that our voices have been heard.
Mm.
We want to know that we've had the opportunity to express. And actually, Charlie, if you and I are in disagreement and I ask you questions because I just need to understand, and we do this a lot. I'm like, in the business, like, okay, here's a data point. Okay, is it real? Where did we get it from? Is it this number of cases or this number, or is it phone calls or leads or whatever? So again, I'm asking those questions because I want to have as much clarity I can about the issue, right? But if I'm in disagreement with someone and I just keep asking in a level tone questions with the intent to understand, and they're allowed to keep talking, they're going to get clear about their own thought process.
Mm.
And they're going to walk away from that conversation thinking they had the greatest conversation ever because they talked so much, right? And people like to talk, and they like to talk about their own ideas. They like to talk about themselves.
Yeah.
And that's okay. I mean, to me, that's a winning conversation.
Now I know these are things that you actually we use in Ben Glass Law, for example, and we practice what we preach. So within Ben Glass Law, within these the leadership team, talk about these agreements and how they create a positive communication framework.
Yeah, so these are our rules, and so brief background in Ben Glass Law. Every Thursday morning from 9:30 to 11, we have the leadership team, our 5 people on the leadership team, and we get together and we look at high level numbers and we solve issues that move the needle. And so this is worth writing down. So first, and I've alluded to it before, to be a great organization. Again, organization can be family as well, right? To be a great organization, everyone has to have the trust and be willing to put issues on the table. If you have an organization where people are afraid to express their ideas because it's politically incorrect, meaning they're afraid they'll be demoted or marginalized in the business, then you can't have the most vibrant organization that's possible. A vibrant organization puts ideas on the table. Everyone has courage, permission, bravery to do it, because that's how you come up with new things, and that's how you can move the needle. And so everyone has to be confident that there'll be no backlash just because someone put an idea on the table. In other words, once the meeting is over, they have to have full confidence that people aren't talking behind their back saying what a goofball or an idiot they are. They have to know that their other ideas won't be sabotaged. Their other plans in the organization won't be sabotaged. So that's all culture. That's real leadership. Hires to culture, fires to culture, has a culture, a defined culture, and reinforces it with every employee from top to bottom. And so if you've got an organization where people are unwilling or afraid for whatever reason to even lay ideas on the table, then it's just simply not going to be as vibrant as it could be. And that's something that can be improved. The second thing, though, is really second or third rule now is once we debate and discuss an idea and everyone has thrown their ideas on the table, and honestly, Charlie, if we're not having hard discussions at least every other week, some discussion that's really hard, then we know that we're not pushing the issues in the firm. So we have frequent, hard, even emotional, challenging discussions. But at the end of those discussions, and when leadership has made a decision as to what the next action step is, then the agreement of the team is everybody is going to be behind that decision. So even if your idea was rejected, you are not going to punish the idea or the others who are moving forward with the idea because you were on the other side of that. And I see I see a lot of small businesses and law firms that don't have that level of trust, and so they don't get the best ideas. And even when a good idea gets through and starts to be implemented, if you've got people that are sabotaging the success of the idea, you're going to be in trouble.
Yeah. and that requires setting aside some ego. But this is something that would have been a question that I definitely would have asked you, which is the idea of let's say you're trying to practice this, but you keep getting interrupted by someone.
This is my bugaboo. Like my family, like this is the hot button for me, is when I'm trying to explain something and I get interrupted. So again, how do we lead with this? How do we um, help others to not be the ones to interrupt us? Well, first it's our own behavior, it's our own thought process. So we have to resist that urge to rebut, to reply, to interrupt, right? All those things that we talked about earlier, and let the other fully express. And then actually when they're done, a great habit, a great technique is for you to not immediately reply, but to say, either to voice what you think they just heard, okay, what you think they just said. Let me make sure I understand what you're saying, okay? Or to say, is there anything else? Is there anything else you want to say about this subject? So again, to teach people how to not interrupt you, you must first model, and you must be an expert at that. Again, it's a mental game you can play. When you feel your own heart rate going up, you feel that urge to interrupt, to show them that you're right and you're so smart, to just let the silence be filled by their discussion, and then invite more of that same discussion before before you start to express or ask the next question. If that doesn't work and they keep interrupting you, then the technique is, if you're speaking and they interrupt you, you immediately just stop. You don't try to interrupt back. You just stop. And I can, kind of make it obvious that I feel like I've been interrupted again.
I'm laughing because I know exactly what Ben looks like in this moment.
Yeah. And it's a hot spot, a bugaboo of mine. So if I've tried the first technique and it's not working, then I'll stop. And then when we get through that, I'll say, I'm going to start speaking now. And if you interrupt me again, the conversation is over. And they do, and then it's done. So, but I've gone through play 1 and play 2 first, right? Again, trying to model the behavior that I want to see. Because when you're interrupting each other, again, why are you doing that? Because you're not listening. You're listening to reply. You're not listening to learn, right? So let's try to listen to learn. The second one, real quick, I know we're coming up on our time, is, hey, and if you have teenagers, this is I'm going to tell you the secret for this, right? Is you get in with someone who just wants to have the last word. First of all, no one's giving out trophies if the other has the last word. Okay, so rather than keeping to go tit for tat, tit for tat, tit for tat, my mantra has always been, stop engaging. I mean, if all you're doing is you're repeating argument A, argument 1, argument A, argument 1, you're just saying the same stuff over and over again, but each of you wants to get the last word in, just stop, just suck it up, okay? I do this when I'm refereeing high school, right? And kids want to get the last word. I'm like, okay, I heard you, and we're done. So the principle would be, it's okay if they get the last word, okay? Have you walked away from the conversation a winner because you've learned something either about that person or you've learned something, substantive. So it's okay to just stop the engagement. And this is tough. Parents and teenagers, oh my gosh. Be a loser in that conversation. Yeah, and and the last thing I think we'll just do real quick, and if anyone has some questions and answers, it's just the book recommendations. Again, I've mentioned both of them on the call. I'm a huge reader, 40 to 60 books a year. Not every book deserves to be read to the end. I take notes, I read with purpose. But Stephen Covey, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, is something, if you run a business, you're in business, you probably have been exposed to it. You probably have read it. It's a great read. Again, we've done, sort of book study on this in our organization in the past. And Brene Brown's book, Dare to Lead, is just really, I think she's right on point. And one of her major points is, that having hard conversations and rumbling in the messiness of human personality, that's life. That's living life, big time. And she's all about having a short time of discomfort and having hard conversations rather than having long periods of sort of permanent regret. So it's just a great book to encourage you to rumble, to encourage you to put your ideas on the table, to be respectful, to control the other by modeling the behavior you want to see.
Yeah. So, one thing that I'll say with this is the other side of Covey's principle is, seek first to understand, then to be understood. One thing that I've learned from you, Ben, is sometimes opening up and telling someone who you're having a conversation with, particularly a family member, since those conversations can be so intimate, is telling them in a moment that they've said a certain thing and they may not know that the way that you heard it was like 600 versions of a paranoid worst possible outcome. And
Right.
saying in that moment, I understand that you're just saying like, hey, you were disappointed in this one little thing. Just so you know, right now where my brain is going is that in my head, I've now constructed this into a scenario where we're getting divorced. I know it's not rational, but that's where my brain is now.
The story I'm telling myself it's a phrase right out of Brene Brown's book. The other good thing to do is you can always circle back. Hey, it's late. We're both tired. Could we circle back and talk about this in the morning? And again, being the one that goes first, and with the words you just said, Charlie, which is like, we had this argument last night. The story I was telling myself was, and then you can have discussion when again heart rates are down, temperatures lower.
Yeah, I'm a hard communicator in that when I feel that something needs to be communicated, I want to dive right in right away. Like I'm bad
Show.
at. Yeah. Yeah. I just if I feel just that slight bit of something is amiss here, Missy can tell you. I'm the one who will just immediately say something feels off. I really would love to discuss what's going on, and sometimes she just doesn't want to. And I'll admit, I'm like, can we? Let's just clear the air. Let's get it. I want to know why we all feel this way right now.
Yeah, and sometimes they're not ready to discuss it, and sometimes I'm not ready to to discuss it when we have the similar conversations. But what we know, after a good night's rest and maybe some exercise and stuff, it just becomes clear how stupid the argument was anyway. Right?
Yes. So if anyone has any quick questions that they want to drop into
Yeah. Thanks.
chat or into Q&A, feel free. GLM member Chris earlier on said, awesome stuff, guys. Thank you. Chris, thank you for being with us. Hope all is well for you where you are right now. But Ben,
thanks for coming in. I mean, it's late at night. We enjoy doing these. If you want to hear more, send us an email or something. We have a lot to say. And as we say at the beginning of our podcast broadcast, we want to look for the positivity and the good stuff in the world, and just look for ways that each of us can make ourselves a little bit better than we were yesterday.
Yeah, truth be told, people, please drop into the chat or Q&A if you're interested in more of this stuff, because the real dirty secret here is that I just simply like having these conversations with Ben because it's a nice tune-up for me. I've heard some of this stuff before, but I can never get enough of it. And actually kind of that, I'd love to just put that little bit of advice out there is continue. If this is something that rings true to you, continue seeking this out. You cannot be fed enough of this information in the world. There's always something else that you can gain, that you can reinforce, that you can find a new tactic to implement the idea for you. John Howley said great thoughts. Thank you, John. Thank you for being here.
It's just so much more pleasant than just, again, you have choices, right? So you can go read a good book, you can have a discussion with somebody, you can turn on all the crap that's on the news, and there's no news anymore. There's no news. It's just all outrage, right? And so the little amount of news I need to know now is, how do I keep myself safe? How do I keep my family and my employees safe? How do we continue to run a business safely? What's the weather going to be at 6 o'clock when I'm out on my run in the morning? And when does soccer come back?
Yeah, there we go. Don't need too much. That's fantastic. Well, Ben,
Thanks,
as
Charlie.
always, thank you so much
Yeah.
for your time. Thank you, everyone who's here, and we wish you all health and good communication in these times.
All righty. Thanks, guys. Good night now.
Bye.